Welcome, friends. Welcome to Empty Cloud Monastery. I am Ayya Soma, and I'm here with a very special guest, Ajahn Pasanno. Hello, Ajahn. As well as many other venerables. Thank you all to all the venerables for joining us this evening. So, as you know, every Friday evening we have monk chat, so a series of questions that we can ask. That usually lay people ask monastics, the panel of monastics that we have. But tonight we have a special monk chat, monks that ask questions to monks. In this particular evening, it will be us asking questions to Ajahn Pasanno, but also all of the friends online that are watching. You're also free to ask any questions that you might have in the live chat, and if there's time, we can pass them on to Ajahn Pasanno. So thanks again, Ajahn, for joining us. Ajahn is currently spending the Vasa Pacific Hermitage, a beautiful monastery in Washington state, so in the West Coast, as opposed to the East Coast where we are here at Empty Cloud Monastery. And they also actually live stream every week. I've been seeing lots of different live streams with Ajahn Pasanno, as well as all the other resident monastics. So even though there is a pandemic, there's also like a lot of goodness, and it's very rare to have this amount of Dharma online. So we can all take the opportunity, and you can all also, take the opportunity to check out the YouTube channel that they have, Pacific Hermitage. All right, so without further ado, I'll ask if any of the monastics have a question for John. Otherwise, I will start with my own personal question. All right. Okay, then I'll ask my question. John, what type of samadhi is needed to attain stream entry?
Well, I think the mind is calm enough and clear enough to have right view. Because that's your fundamental basis for entering the stream is really right view, and of course right view based on solid sila. And the samadhi that is needed is really whatever samadhi, and when we say samadhi, I'm particularly considering the aspect of just a calmness, a steadiness, a stability of mind that's able to see clearly, and and of course samadhi is not it doesn't stand alone. Samadhi is always going to be based on the other aspects of the path. So it is an of course it is an important element, but oftentimes I think we get too obsessed with how much samadhi, how good our samadhi is, what level of samadhi do we have, and we get tangled up in doubt, and then the mind becomes less calm, less steady. So to be able to have the samadhi that is able to give enough stability to the mind, steadiness of the mind, that is much more critical, and to not be, because you're in terms of entering the stream, your fundamental insight for entering the stream is the dropping of Sakaya Ditti, that recognition of the identity or the I making and mind making program of the mind, and as that is seen and is seen through and is, say, relinquished, let go of, released, then one is able to allow oneself to enter the stream of Dhamma rather than getting in the way, which we usually do. So that, and just to have that stability or steadiness of mind. Another
I can't hear you.
of samadhi is the and it just sort of popped. I just pop up. Who knows what reason? But then I'm thinking of a, and I don't actually know the sutta base or the commentarial base, but certainly in the Thai language there is and Ajahn Chah would make an emphasis on it. Is that so say right samadhi is the samadhi that takes nibbana as its object, in the sense, not nibbana as some ethereal, rarefied philosophical ideal, but say right samadhi is a samadhi that takes the ending of suffering as its object. And I think that's a really interesting aspect to be working with in terms of, say, entering the stream, or just as we continue practicing. When we turn our attention to the cultivation of samadhi, is our attention drawn to that which is the ending of suffering, or is it entangling ourselves even more further in suffering? So there's some reflections around samadhi and the stream.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. That is very helpful. And actually, just a follow-up on that, can you elaborate also a little bit about sila within the context of stream entry?
Well, sila in the context of stream entry is certainly your 5 precepts, fundamental 5 precepts, and but then in reality, your, say, renunciant precepts of 8 precepts, 10 precepts, renunciant precepts of the Patimokkha precepts, they're really an elaboration or extension of these fundamental 5 precepts. So your principle is fundamentally the same, the sense of, say, of non-harming, of integrity, and as that commitment to virtue and integrity is essential.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'll ask a question on behalf of Ayya Suvijjiana, who says, Ajahn, thank you for offering to answer questions on the Dhamma. It seems that much of the practice is abandoning the unwholesome roots. Observing the unwholesome roots helps with abandoning them, but the work seems constant. Development of the wholesome also helps. Cessation of greed, hate, and delusion is sometimes a synonym for nibbana. How do we get beyond constant arising and abandoning of the unwholesome? Do all 3 get uprooted at once by insight? Or can one root, such as aversion, get uprooted completely, leaving the 2 other weakened?
Well, I think one of the things is attention, like when we think of the just say like the Ovada Patimokkha, it's really helpful to keep bringing things back to fundamentals or foundations, that sabha papa sarkarnam kusala supa sampada sajita parayota padang etang buddha sasanang. So that sense of that refraining from all evil, the doing of that which is good, purification of the heart. This is teaching of all the Buddhas. The and that needs to be done like holistically, and and there on a certain level there is no end to uprooting the unwholesome, in the sense of if that's one's focus, then that on a certain there will be no end to it, because one needs to be giving attention to the wholesome. One needs to be giving attention to say a purification, and the and the purification, on especially when we think, because we do tend to think of things in terms of doing, and so and as we practice, we get we get engaged in the doing, and the refraining from evil, the cultivation of the good, those are skillful doing. But I think purification is really about trusting in awareness, trusting in the fundamental quality of knowing, and relinquishing, a letting go into the knowing, not a letting go of say into. I was reminded of something I used to say in terms of the so like choiceless awareness, so like, which to me means nothing, but that sense of kind of trying to be in with the knowing and then ending up in some kind of nebulous nothingness, which is really not what the point of it is. So that trusting in the knowing, trusting in awareness, and releasing, relinquishing, giving up to, surrendering to within that knowing. But that doesn't preclude the effort that we make to refrain from the unskillful, to cultivate the good, because we really do need to, because like if you look at the unwholesome roots and you look at the say the hindrances, then it goes on and on. There seems to be no end to them. So it really does need a directing of attention to the skillful, to the whole cultivation of baramis, cultivation of these bright states of mind of the Brahma Viharas. But then also within that, there needs to be that releasing into awareness and the quality of knowing, so that we're able to set aside the doing or the agenda. And that brings us back to that kind of we need to bring it back to roots. What are the roots of our clarity? What are the roots of our contentment? Being content within this human condition, and so that we need to keep returning to where do things begin, and that's where say in the Thai forest tradition, so many of the teachers they keep it's all here, just pointing back to the heart, and because we tend to overthink things or overanalyze things, and think it's actual discrete bits of knowledge that we should have. But it's like our as Ajahn Chah says, it's really, this is, Dhamma is a language of feeling, and so it's a heart feeling.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. And I believe that Bhante Suddhaso has a question, so I'll pass him on to you.
Okay. Hello, Ajahn. Wonderful to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So my question is about the meditation on the 6 elements. So I occasionally use the 6 elements as a not self practice. And once in a while, I also teach this practice to others. And many people find it very difficult to experience the space element and the consciousness element. So I'd like to know what recommendations you have for ways to help get in touch with the space element and the consciousness element in particular. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, the 4 material elements are material. They are tangible, so it's a bit easier to connect with them. And you know, the space element is I mean, it's in I can't remember you know which suttas. I think certainly in the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, there's the description of the space element, and you know, it's the space in the ears, it's a space in the mouth, it's a space in the intestine. It's not that abstract. Of course, we can start to extrapolate from there and realize that, you know, we are surrounded by space, and the wherever we are, we're actually able to function and live because there is some space, and that so I mean, but that's more of a, say, an extrapolation. So beginning to just get a feel for the the sense of space that one is, just like as you breathe in, there is a space that allows one to breathe in. There is some there for hearing. There is a space for the I mean, if our ears were just lumps of meat that covered everything, we wouldn't be able to hear so good. So it's, you know, we're able to, it works much better when we got some space. And so then you start thinking in those terms, and you realize, oh, well, space is this thing that we tend not to, it doesn't draw attention to it, but we are, everything around us is, you know, we are surrounded by space, and the you know, the buildings that we live in are beautiful because of the space that's there. Or Empty Cloud Monastery is very beautiful because the space around, I mean, one, the space in the buildings, and then the space around the Hoika, that's actually much more of what the monastery is. And as well, you know, people's homes are the same. The space is actually what makes it all livable and pleasing and functional. So that just get, and it's something that the mind doesn't normally get drawn. The attention doesn't normally get drawn to it, and because it isn't material. And then consciousness is the consciousness element is just this ability to know an object, and to not because as soon as you start using the terms consciousness, and then it's defined in so many different ways, and it can be reified, and it can be glorified, and it can be, but I think it's just in terms of just it's the basic function of knowing. I can know my say the feeling of touching my thumbs to my fingers. I can know the touch of my tongue within to the roof of my mouth. I can know the feeling that I'm experiencing. So it's just this basic fundamental quality of knowing, and of course it gets named by function in the say eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness, by its object, and that's a good way to sort of like, oh, there is this fundamental knowing, and then to be attentive or alert or aware of it as a basic element or building block of our existence. So that's, I would suggest it, approaching it in that way.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. And at this time, I would like to invite all the Venerables that are here watching. The Venerable Gawakandra unfortunately had a little connection problem, so she had to pop out. But we have here Ayya Santussika and Ayya Chittananda, Ayya Sudinna, who has also joined us, Bhante Sumitta, Bhante Sanathavihari, and Bhante Suddhaso, together with a lot of hidden monastics. I also have a hidden monastic here to my side, Venerable Vimalanyani, another Bhikkhuni. So if at this point anyone here has a question, they can raise their hands. Okay, Bhante Sumitta, great, wonderful. Let me unmute you 1 second.
Vandami Bhante. My question is, we do have in Arya Atangika Magga, Noble Eightfold Path, we talk about the jhanas and 4 jhanas and samapatti. That is the way to Nibbana, it is said. But where can we get connected to Sotapanna from there? Can you please elaborate? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is as similar to Ayya Soma's very first question, especially for stream entry. The bar for samadhi is not that high. The fundamental element is really samadhi, right understanding, along with virtue. Those are your real solid foundation that it needs to be built on. And of course, for samma samadhi to really arise, the element of sila and samadhi are essential as well. But they, in terms of stream entry, the Buddha places far more emphasis on the aspect of right view along with you. So that's why one there are suttas where the Buddha talks of the those who have realizations say there's actually far more lay people who realize stream entry than monastics, because of course there's far more lay people and they're practicing, and they're if they have sila and they have right view, and they are living their lives skillfully, and they're and it doesn't mean that they don't meditate, but it's sort of the meditation is, it doesn't have to be to the levels of samapati. It is enough to bring clarity to the mind, enough to bring well-being to the mind. There is a need for a fundamental happiness within the heart in order to see clearly, to realize the fruits of the practice. And so that especially for stream entry, those aspects of that are not so refined, then and if somebody is really capable and has the skills for really refined samadhi and concentration, go for it. But if one's reflecting in terms of, well, what do I need to enter the stream, then sila, samadhi, and enough mindfulness and clarity of mind and calmness of mind, settledness of mind, to not be shaken too badly by just the programs of the selfing mind, because that's your again, that's that your doorway into stream entry is the relinquishing of and seeing through that identification of self, that identity program, and that's your foundation. It's also interesting to note that the base, that again, that Sakkaya Ditthi is sort of seen through, but then also that the vast majority of suttas that describe the characteristics of a stream enterer are say a confirmed confidence in the Buddha, confirmed confidence in the Dhamma, confirmed confidence in the Sangha, and a solid foundation in that sila, in the 5 precepts. So that's your fundamental result. So I think it's much more say accessible and down to earth than sometimes we assume or project.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ajahn. And at this point, I would like to invite Ayya Santussika and Ayya Chittananda. And if you can unmute yourselves, Ayya Santussika and Ayya Chittananda, and you can ask your question in person.
Hello, Lungpa. It's really great to see you. And all the venerables. Thank you for doing this. I came in with a question, and then 2 more questions came up from what you were saying. So I think the first one I want to ask is
why am I shocked?
So the first one I'll ask is about what you were talking about, the elements.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the consciousness element. And a couple days ago, we were listening to Ajahn Suchat doing his Q&A on Tuesday morning. And he talked about chitta as an element. And I'm wondering if, especially in the Thai forest tradition, do you often hear people using like consciousness, chitta, the knowing, or one who knows, all kind of interchangeably? Or are there some distinctions there that we should know about?
I don't think there's fundamental distinguishing that is required. I mean, the Thai forest tradition, it does not have a rigorous foundation in pariyatti, and they can be quite loose, and so it's much more of an experiential tradition that sometimes defines things according to the text and sometimes doesn't, and certainly and it depends. I mean, and it isn't as if there's just one Thai forest tradition. I mean, it gets tossed around as if it's something coherent, and it's I can assure you it's anything but coherent. So that and certainly Ajahn Suchat, as a disciple of Ajahn Mahabua, then they tend to have certain usages that are idiosyncratic to them, in the same way that, say, like Ajahn Sumedho has a very idiosyncratic way of talking about consciousness, so the use of the word citta in Ajahn Mahabua, and the say the Thai forest tradition lineage of, say, Ajahn Mun in the northern Isan areas, tends to be kind of talking about it in citta consciousness, and it kind of bleeds into each other, and probably, and I haven't heard it talked about as an element, say the citta as an element, but it fits a pattern, so that say it. But I think it's just sort of to recognize that oftentimes the Thai forest teachers tend not to be rigorous in their use of scriptural terminology, and which is, I mean, it's just what it is. It's not good or bad. It's just, you have to just sort of recognize that, and then, well, what are they pointing to? Because they're obviously pointing to something that they have experienced, and they feel is really important and essential.
And Ayya Santussika, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. So when Ajahn Ganha says the citta never dies, it starts to make more sense when I think of the citta as an element. Like there's no beginning or end to that, it just is. Is that the right way to think about this?
Well, I mean, I come back in the sense of when you think about it like that, what is the result? Because in the sense of thinking about it with doubt has one result, and thinking about it with, so it's just sort of, it isn't about getting it, say, right in terms of, I got the right definition, finally I got it right. It's more like, what is it that helps the heart to let go, to relinquish, to dwell in a place of, say, of non-becoming. That's a, see, these are, we need to use these as tools, rather than as kind of as solid things that we have to either understand or get or become. So it's much more around how do we use these different teachings in a way that leads us to a place of I mean, I think one of the things, just sort of thinking in terms of the, say, like the Anapanasati Sutta. We use mindfulness breathing so that it takes us to a place of experiencing impermanence, dispassion, cessation, relinquishment, and it's a tool that we use that carries us to a place of peace, of clarity, of understanding, well-being.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ajahn. And I just want to make sure that Ayya Santussika doesn't have any other follow-ups.
Well, as often is the case, Lungpa just answered all my other questions with his answer, so I'm good to go. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ayya. Okay, great. And actually, Ayya's question made me think that I would like to ask a question somewhat related, somewhat not related. And Ajahn, I was wondering if you could answer if consciousness is always conscious of the six sense basis, or is there something like a universal consciousness? So, like vijnana dhatu.
Well, I mean, the Buddha talks of vijnana dhatu, and it's not wonderfully defined in the suttas, and he talks of course, of the consciousness of the six sense basis, and then of say consciousness that is how do you say, the Anandhang, it's in a few of in the Kevada Sutta, speaking about the kind of unlimited and radiant all around non-manifestative consciousness. So that's it's an element of consciousness, that, or an aspect of consciousness that the Buddha points to. A like universal consciousness, I'd shy away from as a terminology, just because it tends to be assumptions can be made of it that are very eternalist and creating a something, but also that, say, like consciousness, that does another image that the Buddha uses. It's in the Samyutta Nikaya, I can't remember where, but there is that image that the Buddha uses consciousness that doesn't land. And he gives that image of, when the sun comes and there's a, hits the wall, but what if there's no wall, and what if there's no floor? What are they? So that's consciousness that does not land. So again, the mind wants to define and have an answer to it, but what is required is being able to relate to consciousness in a way that we are not identifying with it, in that sense of that I making and mind making and the underlying tendencies to conceit, the ahankara, mamankara, mananusaya, and those programs of mind keep bringing us back to dukkha. And I think it's and the Buddha was brilliant in his, of course, there are these different sort of places where the Buddha kind of speaks of, alludes to consciousness, but more often, what does he keep emphasizing? I teach suffering and the end of suffering. and we keep kind of, yes, but and then we go look for something to get tangled up in. And so that to be able to be, oh, right, dukkha and cessation of the ending of dukkha. It's such a brilliant, and to me that is the brilliance of the Buddha himself, is his ability to cut to the chase of what the heart of spiritual aspiration is really about.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much for your words of Dhamma. Very helpful as usual. And Bhante Sumitta says that Bhante Suddhaso is covered with Buddhist insight. Is that symbolic?
Yes, wonderful.
Yes, very wonderful indeed. And at this point, Bhante Sanathavihari has a question for you, so we'll highlight Bhante Sanathavihari.
Bhante, what is required to get access to Abhinya?
I would say fourth jhana. Fourth jhana. And of course, I think there's people who do experience abhinya, these different knowledges and whatnot. Sometimes just through the fruits of their past karma or something. But to me, it's fourth jhana is really your the heart that is really stilled and has an equanimity that is really solid and has this mindfulness that is purified, and then it can direct its attention to what it's drawn to know. So that's to me, it's a fourth jhana is a critical jumping off point.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ajahn. And Tangang has a question. He asks, usually when I practice mindfulness of the body, I feel the sensations of the body on the skin and the energy around it. However, lately I hear many teachers saying, no, inside the body at the heart. Is that necessary?
Well, I think you have to pay attention to what makes sense to you, and it will as you continue to practice and continue to explore, then there'll be other perspectives that you will you might be drawn to. But I think it's to like mindfulness of the body is such an important foundation of all of our practices. I mean, it really helps to bring an anchor to the practice, and it's like the image that the Buddha gives in the sutta, where he talks of having the pole that is sunk in the ground really deeply, and there are those 6 animals that go off in different directions, trying to, that as soon as they're tied to the pole, and they try to go back to their home base, and the bird flies up to the sky, the monkey goes to the forest, the dog wants to go back into the village, and so on. Those 6 animals go in all these different directions, but they can't go anywhere because of they're tied to this pole that's anchored in the ground. And the Buddha gives the image or the simile of that pole is the mindfulness of the body, and so it's like mindfulness of the body is such an important anchor to our practice, and wherever it is, it seems to be interesting. That's because sometimes we can idealize what we think we should be doing by hearing what others say and whatnot, or our own projections, but to be just having that sense of having an anchor, mindfulness of the body that is able to sustain interest, because it is the mindfulness that is the most important part, that there is a continuity of mindfulness, and then because that's like our, I'd say, development of samadhi and development of wisdom really has to be grounded in this basis of mindfulness, of sati and sampajanya, so that wherever we feel interested or drawn, then to be using that, and then begin to explore different elements. You'll hear different teachings, you'll hear different expressions, and I think that if we try too hard to fulfill what we think others are saying, we'll get tangled up and confused, and they, I think sometimes when they say the teachers talk, or say like know inside, of course there is this fundamental knowing that we experience within ourselves, and usually at the heart base. So it's a good abiding place to come back there. But it's also sometimes like I can remember one of the first teachers I studied with, and there's other teacher I've heard about as well, where it's like, taking from the Satipatthana Sutta, sort of like the body in the body, feelings in the feelings, and mind in the mind, mind objects in the mind objects, and then there's some more inside there as well. There's some more inside there as well, and it's like these kind of Russian dolls that are sort of stacked up on each other, and it gets confusing. And I think Ajahn Jeff does a really good job of translating that idiom from the sutta, Satipatthana Sutta, as knowing the body in and of itself, knowing the feelings in and of itself, and knowing the mind in and of itself, and knowing the objects of mind in and of themselves. So that's I think that's a really practical direction, and it's a very practical translation that is I think very, very helpful. So to be able to be reflecting in that, and when it's sort of in and of itself, well, however we are experiencing something, and in this case, the mindfulness of the body, how are we experiencing it? What is actually drawing one's attention, and what is the say the aspect of interest, because that interest is really important for cultivating well, everything in terms of our Dhamma practice. That aspect of chanda, interest, motivation, desire. So that sense of in terms of those the iddhipadas, the basis of success. But yeah, interest, desire, motivation. It's really important. So that if the interest is drawn to when one develops mindfulness of the body, if it's the sensations on the skin and sort of energy around it, then you develop that, because you have to work with what you've got, and as you do that, it starts to expand. It's like if you've got a knitted cap or something, and all of a sudden it looks like one thing, but and it's got a loose thread, and you start pulling on that thread, and all of a sudden the whole thing comes. So that's in the same way. Our practice unfolds in the same way. So just exploring where your interest is, exploring where you can sustain attention, and then and again, learning how to trust that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. And well, we all had the opportunity to ask a question except for Ayya Sudinna. So Ayya Sudinna, if you have a question, Venerable, you can raise your hand right now. Otherwise, I'll ask Ayya Sudhamma's question. Maybe you can, yes? Okay, 1 second.
Okay, Ajahn, I'm asking a question in connection with what Bhante Sumitta asked. That is, in connection with stream entry. Now, there are the three characteristics that are, there are three factors that are go on when someone enters the stream. And one is Sakkaya Ditti. So, with that, there is a certain amount of fearlessness that enters a person, or that is seen in the person. Can you comment on that, Ajahn, please?
Well, I think, the fearlessness arises because one is able to step back from the identification of I, me, and mine. It's that just seeing things in their true nature, seeing things as they are. This is the way things work. One has a good feeling for causal process. One sees things as, oh, this is, I say, grounded in Dhamma. Someone was like, Dhamma titata, Dhamma niyamata. The Dhamma is the ground. And it's born of Dhamma. So as one sees it in that way, then the kind of identification of I, me, and mine, ning that we do falls away, and fearlessness arises, because the fear and trepidation and concern, that's all about me. And so that yeah, it gets complicated when that me is there. So it is that Sakaya Ditti. Another aspect of say entering the stream, because there is that element of, okay, what do we need to let go of? What do we need to relinquish? So, Sakaya Ditti, Silapata Paramasa, Vichikicha, the sort of doubt and attachment to practice and precept. But I think there's another sutta that I particularly like, was very struck with, and it's sort of, well, what can we do as well? What does the Buddha encourage us to be doing? And that sense of the four things of that are Sotapati Anka, the kind of the factors of stream entry, Sapurisa Sangseva, the association with superior beings, just drawing close to good people, people who one feels a trust in their virtue and their insight. Saddhamma savana, that hearing of the true Dhamma, hearing of the good Dhamma. Yoniso manasikara, that considered attention, that wise reflection, and the Dhammanu Dhamma Patibhata, practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. Because so often Dhamma is practiced according to our desires, according to what we think is, but that's Dhammanu Dhamma Patibhata, practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. Is such an important element. So, but all four of these are again really helpful to look at in terms of, there's the external factors, which come back to these Kalyanamitta, just really having good friends in the Dhamma, drawing close to good spiritual companionship, and the internal factors that do really require that careful consideration, of wise reflection, and how do we apply the Dhamma for its purpose? What is the Buddha's intent? And of course, the Buddha's intent is to give us the skills to free the heart from suffering.
Thank you, Venerable. And Ayya Sudinna is saying sadhu, 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 but she's muted. So I'll repeat that for her. And Ayya Sudhamma, who was not able to join us in person, but she sent a question because she's going to watch the recording later. So she says, my question for the Ajahn is, what, based on his many years of experience and observation, he'd advise to anyone just starting to put a monastic community together? We Theravada Bhikkhunis, 25 years and a few days after our renewal in modern times, are still just getting infrastructure put together. What does he advise, including building infrastructure, but especially for building up community?
Well, I mean, community is not an abstract word. It's people, and you have to have a lot of patience dealing with people, and that. So it's just being patient, and patience is it is this sense of acceptance and a non-reactivity, and it really it takes time. The developing community is it's hard work. So that I mean, one is just not to have too idealized of a version of how one would like things to be, and be willing to go about things slowly, carefully, in a steady way, and I mean, another element of developing community is to really learning how to listen to others and to hear their suggestions, their difficulties, their perceptions, their projections, and be very open to that, and recognize that one is not going to develop community and not be criticized, and there's always going to be difficulties. There's going to be. I remember one time a senior monk who was he'd been several years he'd been starting his own community and developing his monastery, and we were together in Thailand, and we were sitting together, and one time he picked up my arm and started stroking it and started, Ajahn, how did you get such thick skin? Because it's just this, a lot of it is just, you have to be patient with being criticized. You have to be patient with getting things wrong. Of course we want to do things right all the time. We want to do it in the right way, and and we don't always get it right, and so there needs to be a certain humility and a recognition, that we're not going to get it right, and we have to draw on others to help us, so that those are a few scrambled sort of thoughts on that idea.
Thank you so much, Venerable. That was really helpful. And speaking of living in community, I will pass it on to Bhante Sumitta, who is living in this community and is the easiest monk to live with. Actually, living being that I've ever met. Very easy to live with, always smiling, never upset. And he also shared a lot of stories, actually, of living with hundreds of different monastics back in Sri Lanka. But I know that he has some questions for you, so I'll pass it on to Bhante Sumitta.
Dear Bhante, my next question again, I want to go back to Sotapanna. I want to go back to the question of Sotapanna because really I think it is very important that we all need to try work on that. So out of the three fetters, little more comfortable with the first two, but Silabbata and Paramasa, if you could elaborate a little more. I feel a little confused with that, I think, compared to the other two. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I think and I concur with your sense of this is really important. And it is something this is not beyond any of us. So that to be able to pick it up, again, not as something that we're sort of beating ourselves up with, but it's sort of, oh, this is something to really to aspire to, and it's something that is really possible. Silabbata Paramasa, there is my understanding of the is that it is an assumption of purification through precept and practice, so that if I just keep these practices in a certain way, then if I'm really have a real fidelity to keeping the practice in a certain way, then that's going to be a cause of my realization or purification. And the same, if I just keep the precepts in a certain way, strictly or however, I'll be purified through that. And of course, it's not that we don't have precepts, and it's not that we don't have practices that we do, but we have to understand it's the kind of the causal process and of how it functions and how it works, and to not be assuming that if I just got it right, in terms of if I just kept the right precepts and I got the right practices down, then I would experience a purification of heart. So it's that understanding of the place of precept and practice, in that like that there are fundamental precepts that we keep, but then also, are we using them to like one of the things that Ajahn Chah used to emphasize, especially around precepts, but it's an extension to also various practices that we take on. And he was someone who was incredibly strict in, as considered a very, very strict monk. But you have to understand that, say, precepts are for understanding volition, for understanding the movement of mind towards an object, so that we keep precepts, but they're a tool for understanding volition, understanding intention, understanding what the mind is doing. And similarly, whatever practices we take on, they're also for understanding that volition of the heart, that the intention going out to an object. And so that if we think that if we just keep the rules and are really, really diligent in our practice, then we'll reach stream entry. Then we're positing an assumption that isn't fully valid, or as Ajahn Chah would say, well, that's true, but it's not right, or it's right, but it's not true, and so that there is a need for this you know, say the essence of the Dhamma is always a kind of balance that we need to be attending to. In the same way, say like the Eightfold Path is the Eightfold Path leading to the cessation of suffering, but it isn't that we have to reach some quantifiable level of each aspect of the path. It's when the path is in harmony and is balanced that it brings about that result of clarity, relinquishment, release. So it's just, so that similar that Sila Bhatta Paramasa is understanding the balance.
Thank you again, Ajahn. And we also have some friends from Nirodharam Bhikkhuni Monastery in Thailand watching.
Wow.
So we had invited them. So they're not on the stream, but they are sending appreciation. So Nirodharam, Ajahn, I don't know if you're aware, it's a Bhikkhuni monastery in Chiang Mai in Thailand. They have hundreds of bhikkhunis actually there. Yeah, it's wonderful monastery. And Ajahn, well, he's also an Ajahn, but goes by Bhante Suddhaso, had a question, so I'll pass him on.
So Bhante, Ajahn, I have a question, just dealing with something very down to earth here. So I've noticed that sometimes there can be a tendency towards a defilement arising in the mind. And I know it's unwholesome. I know it's not the right thing to do. I know it's going to injure my practice. I know it's going to injure my wholesome states of mind. So even though I'm fully aware of the drawbacks and disadvantages, I go there anyway.
Yep.
So I'm wondering what advice you have about dealing with this kind of like bloody-minded, stubborn, I'm gonna do it even though I know I shouldn't kind of attitude. What do I do about this? Thank you.
Well, I mean, part of it is acknowledging it, recognizing, because sometimes we justify it, and that's a big step to at least not justify it, so that, and you know, I think it's important to recognize that that is very much the practice. I remember Ajahn Chah one time saying something like, 70 or 80% of the practice is knowing what you should do and you still don't do it. So it's just sort of seeing that we're all in this quandary, and we have to take responsibility for it, and we have to have a sense of like hiriyottapa around it, in that hiriyottapa, and I really wish we had more words in the English language that could describe hiri and ottapa, but I think one of the things is recognizing we really want to be turning to this quality of hiriyottapa, because it's based on respect for ourselves. Say hiri is its fundamental root is respect for ourselves, and ottapa being based on a fundamental respect for others. So then we keep turning to these qualities of respect and nurturing that sense of respect, and remind ourselves of that. And that's of course where the just qualities of practice that are they don't get much airplay in Western iterations of Buddhism, but the Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, Silanusati, Chaganusati, those recollections of fundamental and Devatanusati, those are really wholesome qualities to be turning to and brightening the mind, reminding the mind, giving the mind these reminders, because our habits are strong, they're deeply rooted, and we have to be, one, we have to be very patient, and two, we have to be very we have to be really humble. There needs to be a real humility around, because what we can conceive of is, quite amazing and wonderful. And then, of course, what we keep doing is maybe not so amazing. But it's sort of like a humility and a sense of humor. You can't take yourself too seriously. And that lightens things up a lot. Because if we, especially when we are monastics, or we're, especially when we're leaders of a community, sometimes it's embarrassing what comes through our mind. But it's just acknowledging it and recognize, okay, start again. And that much of the practice is just learning how to start over.
Thank you, Ajahn.
All right, thank you so much. And maybe, is there any other Venerable that has another question? You can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. All right, well, if there are no questions from the Venerables, then I'll pick a question from our lay friends, since we have still 10 minutes left. And so Vic asks, Luangpur, thank you for the precious insights. Is the process of abandoning Sakaya Ditti dependent on cycles of samadhi and body contemplation, with each cycle contributing a bit to the letting go?
Well, I think it's much more than just samadhi and body contemplation. It's every factor of the past. Samma dittis, samma ditti, samma sankappa, samma vaja, samma kammanto, samma jivo, samma vayamo, samma sati, samma samadhi. It's all, every aspect of the past, every aspect of virtue, of meditation, and of view, of understanding. So it's all aspects of our life are feeding in to this process of letting go, and it's bit by bit. So that and then and its maybe focal point or its culmination would be an abandoning of Sakaya Ditti.
Thank you, Ajahn. And Gita asks, Venerable, in our lay life, after we start our day early in the morning with Dhamma practice and meditation, through the day, how can one use mindfulness to become aware of arising states that are unwholesome and guard with noble wisdom? Is there a tool we can use to see our arising thoughts?
I would encourage mindfulness of the body. That's it can't be underestimated how important it is, how valuable it is, and how powerful it is, because that mindfulness of the body gives an anchor for attention and awareness, and you've got a home to return to, and to learn how to be really comfortable in the body, and then so that there's attention to the body, an awareness, but then also you start to feel how our moods of the mind, the different trains of thought that starts to begin, how they're experienced in the body. There's that immediate feeling of maybe apprehension that you feel a tightening in your body, or a kind of an excitement at something new, or meeting somebody. There's a feeling in the body. There's a restlessness that we feel, or there's so that we tighten up or we move, and it's expressed through the body. And so that if we become tuned in through mindfulness and awareness of the body, then we start to, it becomes a mirror that we can see our mind, our mental states, our moods much more clearly. So that's, to me, that's one of the most important tools to use, whether one's a layperson or a monastic.
Thank you, Ajahn. And if I can actually ask another question or two, if we have time. So one question is, I know that you were involved in activism in Thailand to protect the forests back in the day when you were living there. Can you perhaps share some words of advice for monastics who are concerned about the environment and want to do their part in the safeguarding of the planet?
Yes, I mean, I was involved in Thailand, and I think one of the things is doing what we can, but also doing things locally, and you never know where those connections lead to one, but it's like looking to see how one can affect a thing, in terms of the environment, one's neighboring community in some way, because it's quite tangible and there's a close connection, and then also to recognize that you're not going to solve the problems, really. I mean, because there's if one comes from that perspective, or that assumption, or that desire, then it's going to be frustrated, and one's going to get angry and upset, and that's not useful for anybody. But to be recognizing, well, what can I be doing? What can I be contributing? Who can I be connecting? What group can I be supporting? What can I be encouraging? And where can there be help given? And being able to do that. It was to me, it was, from my perspective, was a lot easier in Thailand for me, just because of being a Buddhist monk in a Buddhist country. Then there was a directness to it that was quite, say, easy to access. and there was, there was certainly a need in that sense of Thailand had just been going through a huge deforestation because of economic pressures and economic opportunism, and picking up an economic model from the West that was really not workable in the country, and it was affecting the forests, which of course, as a forest monk, I'm pretty invested in, but it's also affecting the lives of people very directly. So there were things that I felt I could do and was able to do and was able to help with, and then connecting with other people. So a lot of it is around just seeing, well, what is doable, and then who are the people to connect with in order to either to find support or to give support. And so it's like connecting with people, the Kalyanamitta, really. So it's a those are elements, and I've and I certainly haven't been as involved in the West as I was in Thailand. A lot of it just trying to establish a monastic form in a new country. That's kept me busy.
All right, thank you so much. Well, we're very grateful that you have decided to establish a monastic community here in the US. So we're all benefiting in one way or the other from this. And actually, Ayya Suvijjiana says, thank you so much for offering this sharing of Dhamma. Bhante Suddhaso's second question helped to further explore the question I asked. Great. So she's far away, but so close. And all right, so we're just about out of time, so we can end with a note of appreciation. Handayam Nammakataya Sadhu Karam Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you so much, Ajahn.
Yes. Lovely seeing you all. So
yes,
take care.
It's been a pleasure. And for those of you asking about questions on Abhayagiri and on Pacific Hermitage, you're welcome to ask all these questions live to Ajahn Pasanno on their channel. So they have live streams periodically. They're even at different times than here at Empty Cloud Monastery. So you can watch all our live streams and watch all Pacific Hermitage live streams.
Yes. Yeah, there's so much available these days. Yeah, we are doing a Friday morning live stream. It's short, somewhat short, 7 to about 7:45, because I do a short reflection and Q&A, and then we go on alms round right after that, because that's a feature of Pacific Hermitage, is a regular alms round, and then Tuesday, it's Tuesday evening at 6:30, meditation, Dhamma reflection, Q&A after, and that is taking the place of our, normally we would meet at Yoga Samadhi, but just meeting these days in a public space is not so possible. So it's we had a while when I first came here, we were meeting, and it was being live streamed as well, but now it's back at the Hermitage until conditions change.
Well, we're very grateful that you are sharing all these teachings, you and the other monastics. Thank you again, Ajahn, and I think we can end again and see you all in the future on Buddhist Insights YouTube channel, as well as both Abhayagiri and Pacific Hermitage YouTube channel as well. All right, and I'll end the broadcast now. Thank you to all the Venerables for joining us again.